the hard problem of consciousness. Is there a way to solve it using computers and your chips and so on? If we could kind of figure out all the pathways and how consciousness comes online?
I mean, from a materialist perspective, you would say, well, if I could record from every neuron in the brain simultaneously, I'd have a perfect snapshot, of what everyone was thinking all the time. Would that be a complete description of consciousness? I don't know. I mean, it's I think neuroscientists don't agree on exactly what constitutes consciousness. Is ChatGPT conscious? I don't think it is, but
no,
there might be someone who could make that argument.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I just looked it up. Anil Seth's paper documented at least 22 theories of consciousness to explain the hard problem. So that tells me we're not close.
Yeah, I think
right.
that we may all be walking around in robotic bodies with 200-year life expectancies.
But here's what your chip could do. Okay, so you put the chip in a bat brain and then connect it to my brain, and then I would know what it's like to be a bat. I'd be sitting there going with the goggles on. Oh, this is what it looks like. Or a dolphin, or a gorilla, or a whale, or whatever.
Pilot whales and dolphins and orcas have huge brains. I don't know what they need all of that brain power to think about. To my mind, their lives seem relatively simple, but maybe they're writing like really complex poetry or something.
Well, that's been the problem of trying to understand animal communications. We have no idea. Sagan made this point back in the 60s when he was a member of that group, the Order of the Dolphins, with John C. Lilly, which kind of fell apart when they started giving LSD to the dolphins. Yeah. But that, in terms of communicating with extraterrestrial intelligences, we can't even communicate with our fellow mammals.
It's hard enough to communicate with each other.
But apparently these whales have these long, messages or whatever in their deep sounds that go on and on and on and can traverse like hundreds of miles underwater and so on.
Yeah.
Who knows what that means.
I'm sure some people have done some interesting information theory to calculate like what is the max vocabulary, like what is the max information transfer rate of whale song. That you could definitely bound that.
Yeah. What about volition, free will? Where do you stand on that with human brain?
I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of experiments that reportedly like refute the idea of volition of free will because you can know when someone is going to make a decision before they are consciously aware they've made the decision. But I'm not sure that proves. I'm not sure that puts the nail in the coffin of free will, so to speak. So I feel like that's something that is. It's definitely not empirically answered today, and I don't know. I'd have to think about whether it could be empirically answered. Like, is that fault? Like, is that a falsifiable? Does that fall within the domain of falsifiability? This idea of free will.
Yeah. Well, it's a conceptual problem. What do you mean by free? It's the same thing with the hard problem of consciousness. What do you mean by conscious? Well, what it's like to be something. How would I know what it's like to be somebody else? I don't even know what it's like to be you, and you're a fellow human, right? So, I don't know. These are difficult problems. So can we have an inner life without language? That's another one of these big questions. So some of your patients don't have language, but they certainly have an inner life.
Yeah, I think you can have an inner life without language. I think there are people who are nonverbal, but still interact with their families. I think that is possible.
Okay, microdosing with psychedelics and so on. Is this kind of a crude version of what you're doing to treat, say, PTSD or extreme depression?
I don't consider psychedelics and microdosing to sit outside of the realm of conventional pharmacology. I just see they're different psychoactive molecules. I think they were stigmatized for a long time wrongly, and they were thought about as being distinctly different from the world of pharmacology. And now I think it's gone the other direction where they're considered some sort of like special privileged class of drugs. I think they're just drugs. I think we should treat them the same way that we treat other brain active compounds.
Okay, last question. Star Trek's Data, is he a person?
Oh,
If you built data, if your company built data,
yeah.
does he have rights?
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because you would say, like, I think you might say, like, okay, well, in first instance mode, no, he's just sort of like an android. But what if you took, like, do you know this construction, the ship of Theseus? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
like, well, what if you just slowly replaced, like, yourself and replaced, like, up to your brain, and then you started replacing parts of your own brain with an android to the limit where you had eventually replaced all of your organic matter. And there was, like, if there's a continuity of self, like, would that constitute a person? I don't, it's another one of those things, like, it's more of a question of, like, the technical definition of personhood than it is a technology question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote about the mind uploaders. I wrote a whole book about attempts to achieve immortality, not just through religion, but also the cryonics and the transhumanists and so on. So they kind of play through that thought experiment. We just replace every one of your neurons, like every night while you're sleeping, and eventually you just have a silicon brain. You wouldn't even know it. You'd still be just you. I think that's correct. If there's a continuity of self from one moment to the next, then it's still you.
But it's interesting because, like, if you stepped into, like, a Star Trek transporter, and if the laws of physics demanded that there could only be one you, and it was your atoms that were being disassembled and reassembled on the other side, I think a lot of people would feel that there was, like, some continuity of self preserved. But if you found out, oh no, actually, we just we transport you and then we toast the old you in an oven, like, they would feel really uncomfortable with that. Like, we just clone you and then toast the old you. Yeah. So there's this idea of continuity, and even the ancient Greeks, like Heraclitus, just said, like, no person steps into the same river twice. Like, some people just think there is no continuity of self. Like, we destroy our own consciousness, like, every moment. And so I find that kind of depressing. I don't like to think that, but like, there are deep questions there, which unfortunately I don't even know if a high data rate brain computer interface can answer them.
Well, let me ask Super Grok. Hang on, no. It seems to know everything. Now, that was my problem with the mind uploaders. So they copy your connectome and upload it to the cloud. But if you're still alive, that's just a copy of you up there, and it's leading a different life than you are now.
Yeah.
You're just like identical twins.
Also, so a lot of my friends work in the connectomics field, fixing tissue, sectioning on an electron microscope, reconstructing it. And I personally think, like, in electrical engineering, there's this idea of a behavioral model. So sometimes there's a circuit, it does things. You actually don't know what's inside. It's kind of a black box. And so you can't write the circuit with transistors and capacitors and such, but you can have a mathematical function that describes the inputs and the outputs, and you can drop it in as a black box into the circuit. And so, like, I think similarly, if you wanted to, like, clone someone and upload them onto a computer, you'd be just as likely to be able to build a good behavioral model where if you strapped a camera and a microphone onto someone from birth and you recorded all their inputs and all their outputs, you could probably build a robust predictor of how they're going to respond in most situations. And so, like, if just having an online version of them that behaves a lot like them were sufficient to consider them uploaded, then you could probably already do that without sectioning their brain. And so I think, but it just doesn't feel like that would be them. It's more obvious to most people that wouldn't be them. But if they feel like their own brain is being mapped neuron by neuron, somehow I don't think it is rationally correct, but somehow it feels more like it's them.
This is why I didn't go into philosophy. These thought experiments take you down these pathways, and you end up like, come on, this is ridiculous. This can't be, like with the simulation, there's a greater than, 51% Bayesian probability we're living in a matrix because, the Copernican principle, we're not the only ones. There's somebody else out there. It's not likely we're first, so somebody's way ahead of us. Look what we've done, Moore's Law in 50 years, make it 50,000 years.
You have to calculate, like, a sensitivity analysis on those, like, because there are a lot of parameters that go into that 51%.
Exactly right.
The error bar is 50% or 51%.
Yes, exactly. Like the Drake equation.
Yes, exactly.
Most of the components we have no idea what to plug in there.